Because again, if people already cared, you wouldn't have to pitch anything.
Yeah, to be clear, don't trap anybody in an elevator.
Yeah, that's never a good idea. But even
So
when
you don't get in there, immediately pull the alarm and be like, I guess we got to talk about my game.
Butterscotch
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 178 of Coffee with Butterscotch, the game dev comedy podcast, Butterscotch Shenanigans. I'm Seth, and I'm the games programmer.
I'm Adam. I'm the drinker of delicious herbal teas.
I'm Sam, and I'm just relaxing today.
And this is a show where we talk about life, business, and working in the games industry. Today is November 19, 2018. Before we get started, we have a warning. Anything can happen in this show. There's going to be profanity. Well, we're going to talk about stuff that children don't care about. So if you're a child, you can scoot on out here.
This is basically school.
This is basically school.
With profanity.
Yep. Which would be
Way
a lot better. I would have listened. I didn't listen.
Didn't listen.
Also, before we get started with the episode, we'd like to thank our supporters from moneygrab.bscotch.net. We got a message from Captain Jazz, which
nice.
Pretty
Very smooth.
pretty smooth. Sup, Borgish Pork Shuffle Buffalo Crew. I've been a fan of BS since Crashlands debuted on Steam. I've just bought Crashlands for the Switch with some of Nintendo cashback coinage.
Hell yeah. Do we actually get any of that?
I don't know.
Well, I said, just in case you guys don't see that special money, have some coffee on me. Cheers.
That's awesome.
So thank you very
I don't know
much.
how that works. I don't
either.
remember reading anything about that.
That wasn't in the contract.
Maybe Nintendo gives us the special magic money.
Yeah.
And then we can use it to buy games or something.
Speaking of all of this stuff in moneygrab.bscotch.net, I kind of feel like we need a lootbox.bscotch.net where we do something with an actual loot box. I don't know what would be
Isn't
in
it
there.
just the merch shop?
Well,
Isn't
but
it
then-
just
but you
the-
know
But
you're
the
getting.
problem is you know what you're buying.
Well, we could sell a mystery box.
You mean a loot box?
Yes.
Yeah, because it turns out
Could be a
it's
sticker
worth
sheet.
more to buy mostly garbage
Yeah. But a bunch of it.
with the chance of getting something that you want.
Yeah.
Because of
It doesn't really work
because of the
well.
excitement.
It doesn't really work well, though, on the merch store because you can just buy all of the things that you want, like, directly.
That's true.
And then the loot box is just who knows what's in there or if it's worth
Maybe
what
you want to
paid
risk
for
it. You know,
Is
maybe you're
it
feeling-
where's the line between a loot box and gambling laws? Right?
That's
because
still
like,
what
or
they're trying to
fraud.
find out.
That's my question too. Is the fraud question. So, for example, like if we're selling merch, we're like, all right, you can buy a loot box.
Yeah.
You might get a sticker sheet.
but you might get nothing.
You might get a pin, which is worth like
What's to
10
stop us
cents.
from just giving you the pin
all
you
the
know?
time.
And that's it.
Right, because we're technically, it's true if we say you might get one,
Mhm.
because implied in the word might is might not.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. This is like when a
And
science,
as long as
when
we
a
send at least
science,
something else to somebody one time, then
Yeah.
we're technically not lying.
and when a science article comes out that says like chocolate may reduce your risk of cancer,
Yeah.
implied in the may is may
May
not.
not.
Yeah.
Right. So
It may
anytime
or
you
may
read
not.
that, you should read it as chocolate may not reduce your risk of.
Yeah.
Because
they're
they're
just
like,
the
well,
same.
duh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a truth fact.
Yeah, I feel like once you fully embrace how might means the exact same thing as might not,
Yep.
and may means the exact same thing as
Yeah.
may not, then it really helps
It
you
gets
to
harder to
parse
get
bullshit.
tricked.
Yeah.
It was also funny if you're having a
I
conversation
might show
with
up
someone.
tonight.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But
I
you
might not.
might not.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah.
that's what that. So what you're saying is
And
you're
just
giving
like-
me no
But
information.
just like in that scenario, whether it's science or somebody coming over, if they say might, the reality is might not.
yep,
you
they're
know.
just trying to soften the
They're just trying
blow.
to soften the
Yeah.
blow.
Because if they were gonna come, they'd be like, I'll be there.
Yep.
But I think it's important to always say that you might, because you could get hit by a bus on the way.
It's
There's
true.
that.
Barring my death, which is an inevitability.
But,
What you want
there's
to
a
do-
problem
be
though,
there.
because if there's always some unknowableness about your presence
Right.
at a thing, then if you do get hit by a car and you're just like lying on the side of
That's
the
true.
road,
No one's going to know.
no one's gonna know. They'll just
Maybe
be
you
like,
would've
well, he
lived.
flaked again.
Mhm.
You know?
Well, that's why you build in contingencies. So you say, in probably about 90% of universes, I'm going to make it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Right.
10% of the time, I'm probably going to get hit by a bus because I'm very unaware of buses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Relative to the rest of the population,
It seems to happen a lot if TV shows have taught me anything.
Yep.
Getting
Yeah.
hit by buses.
especially right after like a sentimental moment
Yeah.
when whenever they hold the camera on somebody walking away
You know.
for slightly too
Yep.
long,
Yeah.
you know, a bus is coming. Was that movie Meet Joe Black?
Yes.
He gets hit by like 3 cars back to back. Boom,
he
boom,
gets
boom.
knocked around like a rag doll. I remember it's like the
Yeah.
it's the opening scene or something.
Yeah, there's
So
like a really touching moment.
Yeah,
And
I remember when I saw that and that we were I'm pretty sure we were kids at the time,
dude.
but I was just laughing hysterically because just the absurdity of the moment took away all the gravitas from it.
Right.
You know?
Because if it had been one car, you'd be like, oh,
Wow.
he died. But
Yeah.
they were like, no, he really.
But they also tried to make it feel like it really happened with ragdoll physics and stuff, you know? So it just,
he got real floppy and was really kind of bouncing around there.
which, you know, maybe it really would look like that, which is then horrifying to think how hilarious it would look, I guess. But
I mean, if ragdoll physics in games teaches us anything,
It is
it's that
hilarious.
It is hilarious.
Yeah.
To become
And
a floppy
horrifying at the same
noodle.
time.
I wonder if this was actually after ragdoll physics became a thing, so that in my brain at the time, I was actually looking at this as ragdoll physics, which was why it was so funny.
Could
Maybe
be.
Meet Joe Black pioneered ragdoll physics for
That's
that
possible,
scene.
yeah.
Somebody saw that, they're like, we need
that in our video
in
game.
our video games.
Uh-huh.
No more death animations. Just
Just
become
throw
a
the body.
noodle and
I think
hurl the body.
timeline probably works out for that.
Yeah.
What they don't get is that people become usually very stiff when they like get knocked out or something like that, right?
That's true. There is that.
Do they get stiff?
They do.
That's rigor mortis. That's when you die.
Well, that's
No,
that's
there's
like
there's
after
also a
living
thing that
wild.
happens where your arms like
Flex out.
forwards when you get
I
knocked
think
out.
your legs flex too. Like you kind of just like
Yeah.
But
Not when you die. Not when you die.
Not
That's a different
permanently.
thing.
yeah.
But
But when that happens, isn't it just like for a moment?
it's for a little bit. That's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Like there's, I
Because
feel like
then
there's
you're all
another,
floppy again.
there's another unexplored, which is not the ragdoll, but the Plankdoll.
Plankdoll, where you become kind of stiff.
Isn't that
a
what
little
a-
pliant.
Isn't that
you
what
like
a
tip
dog
over.
is basically?
Yeah, dog is basically.
It's a plank doll.
Yeah.
Plankdoll.
'Cause they're
Dogs
just
are
very
always
stiff.
doing planks.
Yeah, they really are.
It's true. They always just lay down on their side and go to sleep because they don't have any shoulders.
They're like, I'm
Yeah,
done
it's
planking for the day. I'm gonna
Just gonna fall over.
lay down on the
I
side.
have a basically even plane on the side of my body, so I can just lay wherever I want.
That's a good
and it's
advantage.
comfortable. It's a huge
It
advantage.
comes at the cost of absolutely no manual dexterity. Have you ever seen a dog try to like get something out of from under a couch
Yeah,
or
it's
something?
not.
It's hilarious, but it's not very effective.
Mhm.
Let's get on some studio news. Last week we talked about emails and sending them and how we can't.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
What's the update this week?
So last week we were all like, the
Oh,
world is
God.
fucked. It's on fire. Emails
Literally
won't go.
California's on fire.
California's
It is.
burning,
Yes.
and the rest of the world isn't.
And that's
burning,
probably what's
but
happening. Is our emails are going through California and just catching on fire.
Or the
Yep.
Google's
As they
over
go.
there.
Google's
Yeah, that's where
over
Google
there.
is, so this all makes sense.
As far as I understand, if there's a fire in California, then all of California is on fire.
I mean,
right?
yeah,
That's-
it's just like when we were driving to get groceries and stuff on Saturday, and we saw a car drive by that had a Grinnell College bumper sticker on the back, and so so we all grew up in Grinnell, and so my wife looked at me, she was like, "Do you know that person?" Of course, as a joke, but then I was like, I thought about it for a second, I was like,
You
I
might.
might, you know,
I might,
But you might not.
but you might not.
but I might not, and I probably don't. Just bring it back to reality.
I may know this person.
So last week we tried to send out the ballyhoo,
Yeah.
and we sent out 7,000
That's our-
emails.
that's our newsletter.
We sent out 7,000 emails, and on Saturday, and like it was like a 10% open rate, which is literally a quarter of what it should be.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I just paused it, and I was like, I'm not going to send the rest of these because this is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And then we complained about it a bunch on Monday last week.
Yeah, I feel like we nailed that part of the episode where we sit around and whine about
Yeah,
stuff.
we did great
We did.
at
That
that
was a
one.
good segment. I feel like we should bring that segment back.
It actually sounds like people enjoyed it. I think it is important to talk about how like.
Talk about the rough edges.
You talk, there are some rough edges to this, and nothing is certain, and everything is hard. You know.
Yep.
So I think it was probably worth doing.
Sometimes it sucks.
But then after that, after we shot that episode, mic'd that.
we shot it.
What do you
We took
do?
that back.
we taped it.
But
and
when
we
it's
shot it.
we taped it, I guess.
We
Okay,
taped
sure, yeah.
it.
After we taped that episode, that still
Taped it,
sounds wrong.
And then we shot it.
Then we shot it, and then we tried to figure out what to do about this.
Mhm.
And so my solution at that time was to say, okay, the things that probably anything that makes our emails look like spam is probably what keeps them from getting in people's inboxes, which makes sense.
Seems reasonable.
So the two big parts are, of course, the fact that we're sending a fuckload of them, which is we just have to do.
Can't
so
really
we
get around
that. And then the just content of it. So what do marketers? Because I was worried about it landing in promos. This promos folder, right? And I was like, okay, so what do marketers do? So well, they have real fancy fucking HTML emails. That go out.
Beautifully emailed.
Beautiful. They have lots of images and they're like really well structured. So I said, okay, let me just yank all this fucking HTML out of here. So
Just
just
yank
get it out of there. So I did that, and then the funny thing was that it almost looks the same as it did.
So you tied a string around
Tied a
it,
string around-
and then you tie a string on a doorknob.
Exactly. You just rip
slam it.
Just
Get
rip
the
that
HTML right
HTML
out.
out of there.
And so I
The
did
email
that.
didn't even feel a thing. It
Yeah.
was crazy.
It didn't even notice.
Didn't cry or anything.
And then I retested it through our test system, and it passed now. So I was like, cool, this may be the thing.
Or
So
may
we
not.
scheduled it for this weekend and we ran it through. So we haven't seen today's yet because we're recording it before today's batch goes out. But we saw Sunday's, yesterday's, and it was literally twice as good as last week, but still half as good as it should be. So, which then suggests, hey, okay, so that helped, but we're not there yet. And so I think the next thing is that we like to put links in our emails.
Because people like to click on things.
At least that's what we believe. We know that we like to click on things to go learn more about
love
the stuff.
clicking on things.
Yeah, it's like the whole rabbit hole
Yep.
phenomenon.
I click 30, 40 times a minute normally.
Which is good because we had 26 links in this email.
It's actually true. Even when Seth doesn't need to be clicking.
He's just
whenever we
Yeah.
work on a shared Google Doc together, Seth's cursor is just clicking all
For
over.
some reason, I have this thing where like wherever I'm reading, I click there.
I think it all comes from your MMO playing.
But that wouldn't
Which
make
is
sense because
constant moving and clicking and moving.
Well, I
and
guess,
clicking.
that's true because I click things to target them. So when I'm looking at something,
Yeah.
I just click on it. So that
Targeting this word.
Yeah.
So I have to target things to click on them.
That's wherever your focus is where a click has
true.
to happen.
Well, I'm just a weirdly programmed robot.
Yep.
I'm not in control.
Mm-hmm.
But so we're still not pumped about this open rate, but I feel like we're at least making progress towards the problem. And the next step is going to be to say, okay, how do we make this just not look like spam at all? Which is
I have
basically to
I have a
remove
way.
all of the fucking links.
Yeah, I have a way to make it not look like spam.
Huh.
Okay. What you do is we write it.
We
write
custom read an email for all 140,000
No,
recipients.
what we do is we write a blog post. Okay. Then we copy just the text of the blog post, put it into an email, forward it back and forth between like 30 people. Okay. Then we forward the final forward to our
140,000
people. And it just says at the top, it just says thoughts.
Oh yeah,
Because then it looks like a work email.
yeah, with a whole bunch of forward head.
Yeah.
things
Forward.
Right.
Ballyhoo.
So we need to make it look like somebody hit reply all on a huge company network.
Yeah.
It just got out.
And they just said thoughts
Yep.
because that's how people do work email.
Mhm.
I'm going to offload all this work onto you.
Yeah.
I read it, but now I'm going to make you read the whole thing and just say thoughts.
Yeah, that was from Deep Work, wasn't it? The project-oriented emailing approach. Did we talk about that?
Yeah.
I think we
Yeah.
did at the time.
Yeah, it's the idea that when you send somebody an email, respect their fucking time. You've already know why you're asking them the thing, and you have all the relevant information.
So just give it.
So give it in like a couple sentences, and then and don't do that bullshit of just sort of send
Thoughts?
somebody a giant pile of garbage and just say thoughts.
Mhm.
Don't do that.
Yep.
But again, we will start doing that because
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
how we get out of the spam
Mhm.
filter.
So that's a good plan.
So Adventures in Spamland, episode 2. Next week will be episode 3. Hopefully we'll be
To
out of
be
it.
continued. Well,
Slaying
next week
the
we
spam
now have to
dragon.
wait until we send the next.
Oh,
next
yeah. It's gonna
batch.
be like
so,
4 weeks.
yeah. So who knows? But I think the plan is going to be to try to send more often. So maybe every 3 weeks or a very
Smaller.
tight 4 weeks instead of this whole loosey goosey 4 to 6 weeks thing. And then just send smaller ones. And we're basically just ripping all those fucking links out of there.
Like 4 links. Maybe.
Max. Yeah.
What if we just had one link that says, if you want some links, go to this link, and then that link
It's
has
just a
the links.
list.
It's a list of links.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Link list.
Yeah.
Links.bscotch.net.
Yeah,
Mhm.
actually, we could do that.
But it's LYNX and it's just a picture of a cat.
It's a picture of the
Yeah.
cat, and then the cat,
'Cause everybody loves cat pictures.
yeah, the cat has a voiceover with a funny voice,
Ooh, yeah.
like in Funniest Home Videos.
Right.
Mhm.
And it
And
speaks.
it reads the links out
Yeah.
loud because you can't detect that with spam filters.
That's true.
Yes.
It's the links.
The links.
We could put like a link hat on it or something. Anyways, also industry news.
Yeah, what happened?
Today is the 20th anniversary of Half-Life.
Mm-hmm. Happy birthday, Half-Life.
So first question is,
You oldie.
what was the Half-Life of Half-Life? Probably 5 years.
Yeah.
So we're deep in the tail of that
Mhm.
game, I think.
Yep.
Half-Life was made by Valve in 1998.
Yes.
Or rather, it was released in 1998. Not, it's probably made in 1995 or something.
Yep.
And it was a big sort of step forward in the shooting people in the face genre.
It was a genre-defining game because nobody had really considered that you could put like a puzzle into
Or
a shooter.
Yeah.
or much of a story.
I think Doom had the story in Doom was there's aliens.
You're a marine.
You're a gun guy. And there's
Yeah.
bad guys. So
And
they didn't go.
The aliens are demons.
Mm-hmm.
They're demon aliens.
Yeah.
From Demon Land. So that was they originally the name for Doom was Demon Land,
Yeah.
and then they changed it.
Little known fact.
So Half-Life sort of became this phenomenon. It got tons of Game of the Year awards. And then Half-Life 2 came out, and that was an even bigger deal.
And that was in 2004.
In 2004, and Half-Life 2 was the game that had this weird patching client called Steam that you used to patch the game, and people hated it.
Yep.
But then they used Steam to deliver Half-Life 2 Episode 1 and 2,
and the Orange Box.
And other gaming companies were like, hey, you guys have a lot of players and you're already selling shit through your weird patching client. Can we just sell our shit through that patching client?
Seems like, I guess.
And I was like, whatever, you know.
Yep.
And then
they were releasing like 12 games a year through Steam for like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And then
so
it started to go up.
Yeah. So if you had Steam, what you had was once a month an awesome game would show up, and you're like, yeah, and then you would just buy it.
Yeah. Then we didn't have to go to Best Buy anymore or CompUSA, which I think
we
was
just
already
had
bankrupt.
Steam.
We just had Steam.
We had Steam with our 35 games available.
And then all the best games ended up there. Now all the best games and all the worst games and all the ones in between end up there.
Yep. Every game.
And just all the games.
Every single game is on there. So let's talk about where Valve has gone in the past 20 years.
There's an interesting article today which was about Artifact. So Valve hopped on this card game.
Well, first
train.
I want to say, so Artifact is Valve's new card game, and it was, I think, a year ago that they announced it.
Yes.
And everybody's been waiting for Half-Life 3 for 16 years now or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever, 13, whatever years.
Time.
And there's this running joke that it'll never come out. And Gabe Newell, the CEO of Valve, has said that he doesn't want to make Half-Life 3 because there's absolutely no way that it could ever live up to people's expectations.
Which is probably true.
It's definitely true, and I totally sympathize. But Valve now has this problem where anytime they make an announcement that there will be an announcement, everybody immediately assumes Half-Life 3, and then they're immediately disappointed. Which is exactly what happened with this new game, Artifact.
Yeah. So Artifact is basically, but it's more or less like a Hearthstone-esque sort of game. So it's a card game. You play on your computer. That's it. And it's sort of modeled after normal card games that you play in the real world. So those who aren't familiar,
by normal card games, you don't mean using a deck of cards.
No, I don't mean a deck of cards. I mean where you build your own deck.
Yeah, like
the
Pokemon,
collectible card game. What do they call them?
Magic the Gathering,
TCGs,
trading card games.
Yeah. And so basically, what you end up doing is you buy a pack of cards from the store, and then you tear it open. And this is part of the fun of the real world games. And then you figure out what cards you got because there's just a random selection of them in there. And then you have to sort of figure out, which ones to bring with you to fight your friends locally in town, because that's the only way that it works. So these online games, essentially, it's just the same idea, but then leveraged over the internet. So now you have your trading cards, and then you can battle, someone in Singapore or something with your trading cards. And so there's a constant stream of people to fight, constant stuff to do. But the interesting thing about Valve's approach, so a lot of games, again, we've talked about loot boxes quite a bit. And sort of a card pack is this really weird thing because it does exist. It is essentially a loot box.
It just is a loot box.
They've been around for decades.
Yeah, and everyone's used to them, though, in the real world, right?
Yeah.
It's actually kind of fun to open.
You'd go to the grocery store and they'd be like, here's a little Yu-Gi-Oh thing. And every kid who walks past would be bothering their parents to buy it for them.
This is how you start teaching your kids early that gambling is fun.
Exactly.
It's just fun.
It's just a good time.
Yeah.
So these exist in the real world, have for a long time, and some really interesting stuff happened with sort of bringing them into the internet, which is that there's no real physical good behind it. Exactly. And so in the case of Hearthstone, another one of these card games, they sell these card packs. So you're guaranteed a certain number of cards, and you're guaranteed a certain number of quality of certain cards. So you're not going to get a total dud pack that has nothing good in it.
There's always going to be at least one, they call them rare cards or epic cards or something like that. And so the fun of it then again is the same thing, which is that you open it up, you get to see which 5 ones you got, sort of a random roll, gambling sort of situation. So what Valve did with Artifact was they made it so that both the game up front cost $20, so you already paid a considerable amount to get in, and then you only get 2 starter packs or something like that, I believe, with it. And so you have sort of just really. I assume there's
deck.
1,000 other cards.
I'm sure there are. So you have this really flimsy deck, and then in order to they wanted to sort of model it very, very closely off of the real world experience. Because
in the real world, you also just buy one of those decks first.
Yeah,
and it's got 4 cards.
Yeah, and then you just have them, and then if you want to go play someone, if you want to trade with someone else, people also sell these cards on eBay and stuff like that.
Yeah.
There's a Black Lotus Magic the Gathering card or something like that is the most expensive trading card.
Well, with Magic the Gathering, there are people who have $40,000 and more invested. I remember reading an article about a guy who had a binder worth $40,000 of Magic the Gathering cards that he left somewhere. And was just so happy because somebody found it and brought it back to him. It was like at some big Magic the Gathering event or something.
Oh my God.
Which is the prime place for people just to steal that shit,
Yep.
you know. I remember reading that article and I was like, that is too much money
In a binder.
in a binder.
Yeah. So
Put that in a bank.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
long and the short of it is that Valve probably stuck a little too closely to the real world when it came to this thing, because they made it so that you have to pay for a ticket. You have to buy a ticket in order to like compete against people. Is that
Yeah,
right?
something like that.
And then
Because normally if you go to a big tournament, somebody has to host that tournament at a venue.
And you do a
it
buy-in.
costs money and you
exactly.
buy in and there's probably food there and whatever.
Mhm.
So in the real world, it makes a lot of sense to pay a ticket to go to one of these
Mhm.
events.
And then on top of that, they made it so that if you trade with one, you can't actually just straight up trade with players.
No, there has to be money involved.
You have to sell your cards.
with real money.
You can put them on essentially the real money auction house
Uh-huh.
of Artifact, which we've talked about how dumb of an idea this is before. And then Valve would take a cut also of whatever the money was. So if I
you
sold a
pay
card,
Valve to get access to cards, and then to get the cards you want, you keep paying Valve.
Yep.
Mhm. Anyway you slice it, Valve's getting paid.
And then to play the game, you have to buy a ticket from Valve.
yeah, so
Right,
basically
you buy
you
a
have to
ticket.
pay money to just do anything, it sounds like, in this scenario. And so, of course, there was a big uproar about it over the weekend.
Yeah.
And now they're trying to figure it out. They're like, oh my God, sorry, we're trying to figure it out. But,
Yeah, they're
what the fuck?
backtracking on. I think the thing that they implemented basically immediately because they could was to make it so that you could convert the cards you don't want into tickets.
Yeah.
To play more rounds. or
So in other
something.
words, now if you buy a card pack and you get a card that you don't want or a duplicate,
Yep.
you can turn that duplicate into a ticket that allows you to go play a game against someone,
yeah,
presumably.
And if you lose, well, that sucks.
yeah,
That
yeah.
does
For me,
suck.
I don't like any of this. I don't like this. I don't like the loot box model. Period. In real life or in
Mhm.
digital life. But so the whole idea of like buying a Yu-Gi-Oh card pack or whatever. I can still get behind that a little bit more in the sense that like there are cards in there. They can't nobody can fuck with what's in there, right?
Mhm.
It just is what it is now. But as soon as you're talking about a digital card deck, every incentive in the universe points at the company who is offering you this loot box to
Various
to
stacking
fuck
the-
with what's in there
Yeah.
to modify your behavior, right?
Yeah.
Well, the
And-
companies have patents on these.
Exactly.
on these
And
kinds
it's
of
not even
things.
illegal to do that, at least it doesn't
Yet,
right?
to basically tweak. Yeah, because like when you
This is
go
what
to
Destiny got in trouble
yeah,
for.
Yeah.
you go to a slot machine in Las Vegas, which is what this is, right? You go to a slot machine in Las Vegas, and they have to advertise the percentage payout.
Yep.
Yeah.
which is
And when
always
and it's-
95 cents on the dollar.
Right. And it can't
Right.
be based on who you are and your behavior.
Right. And so what they can do, for example, in some of these digital games is like the first one or two things you buy, they can really give you something really good,
Yeah.
right? Because they're tracking what you're buying.
Because then they can hook you.
And then they can slowly reduce the probabilities over time so that you see what the potential is early. And then because people don't really get sunk costs or statistics, people start doubling down and tripling down or whatever. And
But
you
also now they've invested more into it. So now it's like it has become their hobby and they need to get better cards because everybody else has better cards.
Yeah.
And
And I mean, like I saw a post one time where there's this one mount that you can get from a boss in World of Warcraft that has a 1 in 1,000 drop chance, and it's
from a boss.
and it's old enough content now that people can solo this boss. It used to be a raid.
Yeah.
That, like when you killed it, it was like you and 20 other people, and then
So
that
even
was
if it did drop you, just
you still had a 1 in
Sure.
20 chance of the 1 in 1,000 or whatever. And so I saw that, you see a post where some person is like, I've been killing this boss every week for the past 6 years. and they're like, here's how many times I've killed it. I've killed it like 925 times or whatever. And then on like all my different characters and, because you can do it on each character each week that you have. And then they said, so I figure, since it's a 1 in 1,000 drop chance, I figure sometime in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
That's not how that works.
Yeah, they're like, I am statistically, as they put it, I'm statistically guaranteed that it's going to be dropping pretty soon.
No.
And then half the people responded and they're like, yes, you got this. That was my experience as well. And then somebody else comes in and they're like, you idiots do not have any fucking idea how statistics work, because if it's a 1 in 1,000, then
always a 1 in 1,000.
every time you do it,
There's
it's
a
1
1 in 1,000 chance.
right?
Yeah,
like you can't
that's
say
it.
like I flipped a coin 4 times and it came up tails all 4 times, which means that the next 4 are guaranteed to be heads. Like no,
That's not how it works.
It's just that's just not how it works, you know.
Yeah, just the same as it was
But
before.
you know, yeah. So people don't get how these things work.
Yeah, well, I think in particular when you talk about dynamic statistical modification on these things to boost revenue, you start getting into
that's the thing.
territory.
I think it's way too easy to do really fucking shady and ethical stuff in the digital space in general because it's hidden, because you can change things on the fly.
And this has long been a practice in mobile games too.
Yeah,
you know, they modify prices, they do all sorts of stuff based on behavior, and this also was the case with Destiny 2, which people did get really pissed off at because they found out that if you had been, if you had already bought some of the like engrams, what they call basically loot box, if you'd already bought some of them, then it made it harder for you to get the content that you could find that would have been in those.
Yeah. Essentially, the more you spend, the more they assume that you are spending compulsively beyond your control,
and the more they target
and then the more they just keep roping you in.
Yep.
Which like there's no good way to spin that. Like you can't talk your way out of trying to explain how what you're doing as a company is like a good
it's
thing.
only gross. You know, I think there are these levels of it that you see in the real world where you're like, okay, I get that, it feels okay. And it's things like if you go to a lot of websites to buy something or whatever, like, so let's say you put some shit in your cart and then you leave, right? And you don't come back for like a week or something, or ever actually. You might get an email a few days or a week later from that company being like, hey, we just saw that you abandoned some stuff in your cart. How does a 10% off your purchase sound, right? Because they're trying to like get you back in to sort of continue that thing. And from a privacy perspective, like I can get not liking that, but it also doesn't feel like unethical and gross or any of that, right? But when it comes to this,
because they're assuming that you wanted that stuff to begin with,
right? And they're they're trying to sell you something. Like they're trying to like
it's an actual thing.
Yeah, they're giving you an incentive to come do it, right? But when it comes to in-game purchasing of any kind, I mean, purchasing through a digital thing for a digital thing, it's just so easy.
Well, it's easy. There's too much control, essentially.
Yeah,
there's way too much control at that level. So yeah, I mean, so Valve got in trouble for it by their fan base. It was like, what are you guys doing over there?
And just like what we talked about with Diablo 3, Real Money Auction House had the same problem. And this is an outgrowth. Sam and I were chatting about this over the weekend, but this is an outgrowth of the publicly traded model of companies to demand constant growth. So if you have, let's say you're a game studio and you've got like 10 million players, that's great, right? Wrong, because you never have enough players if you are a publicly traded company.
But Valve is privately owned.
Right. So in this case, I don't fucking know. Well, actually, no, they are privately owned, but that doesn't mean that they don't have investors.
Sure.
Right. And so
it also doesn't mean that because, I mean, your average person, like literally everybody, has bought into the same idea that publicly traded companies are based on, which is that what you have is never enough, that you must always get more.
Right. It's like we talked about with no matter how fast you go in a game, it's never fast enough. Yeah. No matter how much your company grows, it's never enough. Or even if your company isn't growing, then that's a bad thing, right? And so if you have a dedicated fan base of 10 million players and you're making $1 billion a year or something, that is viewed as a bad thing if those numbers aren't increasing. Right. And investors will start to pull out because they don't see their money going anywhere. And a lot of times what you'll see is in these private companies, an investor will come in and they'll drop whatever millions of dollars into a company expecting a return, right? And if it looks like that isn't going to go anywhere, then they'll want to be bought back out, right?
And of course, if you've spent that money if
you spent that money, now you've got to figure out what to do about that problem. Either get more investors, take out loans, whatever. So it's a big problem if you're not constantly growing, as if you have other people involved, other people's money in your company.
Then otherwise, if you just have yourself involved because you've probably bought into the same view of the world that everybody else has, which is that
everything must be growing.
Everything must be growing.
Yeah, so I think it's a strangely poignant 20-year milestone for Valve. Let's all just leave it at that.
Yeah, 20 years ago, they released a groundbreaking, completely beloved title that was basically the origin point of an entire market called Steam and the ownership of that market by the one company that also launched that game. And then here we are 20 years later with a digital card game mimicking real life card games that does look good. Like, I mean, I'll give them that.
It's always going to look good.
So they got that going for them.
Yep. So I don't know. We'll see where this goes over the next couple of weeks. I assume not much.
I don't know. I will say I was surprised at how successful Hearthstone was, because I felt similarly about that, in the sense that just like, coming from a company well known for these very epic, deep, experienced games, and then launching a card game based off of all that, I was like, I couldn't see it being really successful because it just seems like it didn't make any sense in that portfolio. But shit,
I think the reality is
it's done very well.
Well, I think the reality is if you're a fan of a company that makes these deep experience things,
you'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
Well, not only that, I think the reality is that you have different games that you want to play at different times, right?
Yeah.
I don't always want to be like 6 hours deep into an RPG to enjoy something. Sometimes I do just want to be like, let me play a round of something.
Although you can't, it's really hard actually to play a round of Hearthstone because people are really good at it.
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't.
Yeah, I get my ass kicked.
Yeah, I did pick it up and played it for a while, but
yeah, I played.
I find it hard to sit down and play because every time I boot it up, I need to download 3 gigabytes worth of updates. So it's kind of the downside of it being a PC first game and then coming to mobile is that it's just enormous. So it's good though, but I don't know. We need to talk about, before we get into questions, we need to talk about cashews, I think.
Oh yeah. And this was a thing I discovered last week, or my wife and I discovered last weekend. We got in a can of cashews and just fucking mowed through them because they're the most delicious nut. Because they're just fat. So, that's great. But then at some point we're just like, where do cashews come from exactly? Like, are they a ground nut? Do they come from a tree? So
is it an animal? I don't know.
Is it an animal?
Or are they like prunes where they're really a different thing and then they become a cashew?
Yeah. So what? I just wanted to know what they were. So I Googled it and was just, so anybody listening who's not seen this, like, it was just so fucking baffling because a cashew is basically, so imagine a fruit, an apple, say, like a green apple, right? Now imagine that fruit, has that little butt part, right?
The fruit butt.
The fruit butt. Yeah. Imagine it pooping out a cashew. Just like it basically, like it pooped out the whole thing and it's just stuck there and hasn't dropped yet. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
This is how fucking cashews grow.
So there's a fruit.
There's a fruit called a cashew apple. That doesn't have any nuts in it. It just shits out a cashew. And then the cashew itself, so it's just like there. It's just stuck to the bottom of this fruit. And it's only one. So there's one cashew on one cashew apple. And the cashew is also covered with a toxin, which is basically like poison ivy. So when people are prepping these things, they have to wear gloves and they have to like shave the outside layer.
Turd.
It's a poisonous turd.
Poisonous
of a fruit.
apple turd.
Yeah. So,
but they wash it off. They clean it.
They have to like scrape it off. That's which is why cashews are expensive, I guess,
because you got to manually scrape off the poison.
Yeah. But like how
my
fucking wild
all these things.
How did this happen?
Yeah, it's always how did someone eat that? At like the first discoverer of the cashew.
Well, but even more importantly,
just a lot of steps.
There had to be somebody who ate it, died.
Yeah.
And if somebody else saw that and they were like, I'm going to give that a try, but
I'm going to
first I'm going to scrape off maybe it's the outside that kills people.
Well, I don't think it kills you. I think it just gives you really bad, skin reactions and stuff.
Can you get poison ivy on your insides?
Presumably.
You can get it anywhere, probably.
It's probably a nightmare.
But yeah, so this guy, somebody ate a cashew, got some kind of real bad problems. And then either that same person went for it a second time, but with a refined process.
This is why sometimes when people are like, you guys, Crashlands is just so weird. Like, how did you guys?
Yeah, have you seen the real world?
Have you looked around? we got apples shitting out nuts over here. Poison nuts. And we're eating them.
And we're scraping them off and eating them.
Yeah.
Look around.
And you can't even, because then I was like, so then my first thought was, I want to eat a cashew apple.
Is it the story of coffee? Like, it was about goats, right?
About goats?
Yeah.
Did they get jazzed after eating coffee beans?
Yeah, there were like some people.
They were like, look how jazzed these goats are. I want to be that jazzed.
Some people noticed that their goats, like whenever they ate these particular plants or whatever, then they got all like super fucked up and like really energetic. So, of course, the people were like, I want to do that.
I want whatever they're on. Yeah.
So they started eating the coffee beans.
Yeah. I see billy goats are always jumping around, but they just eat those pellets. Maybe I should give those a go. Yeah. It's like 25 cents for a
You never know. There's probably weed in there.
Probably. Some form.
That's why goats have those like horizontal like, slit pupils because they're just
so high all the time their pupil went sideways. It's crazy.
Goats. Man, but it turns out you can't get a cashew apple like anywhere because their shelf life is basically 0, and they bruise so easily that they can't be shipped anywhere.
They exist to shit out a nut.
Yeah, that is it. That's all they do.
That's their sole
So
purpose.
if you think your life is bad,
I want to find one though. Like, where can I find a fucking cashew apple? Somebody somewhere.
I don't know.
Because they can't grow. Then I was like, okay, what if I got a cashew tree just to grow in my house so I could just like
St. Louis can grow basically everything.
No, because these things are like deep. They're like equatorial.
Okay.
Yeah. So like even like most of Texas is not sufficiently hot for these things. So then I was like, well, fuck,
You can't even
fly
fly down there.
But then I was like, okay, can I grow them inside? I Googled around, like, sure enough, you can, except I can't find anywhere that sells them.
Well, why wouldn't they sell them? It shits out a poisonous thing. Like, you want that in your house?
Cashews are delicious.
And I assume the cashew is not the seed. The seed's probably in the apple.
I don't know. It's fucking whack.
Unless it's a berry. Is it a berry? I don't know.
No, it's actually it's a certain kind of, because I was
It's got to be a seed. Why else would it do that?
For fun.
It's
or just for funsies. Maybe
Plants are crazy.
yeah, plants are crazy, which I think is really just the summary of that.
I saw this awesome video of these cucumbers that have like the stem going into. I think it was on like I'm Gonna Reddit or something over the weekend. But there's a stem going into them that looks like sort of a nozzled hose. And apparently, what happens is it builds up enough pressure inside of the cucumber by just like pumping it full of liquid over the course of like weeks, and then at some point it just blows. And the cucumber is full of seeds, and so it just like the cucumber goes bursting off this thing and just is like catapulting or cannoning seeds out of itself.
It's weird how
Is this some specific kind of cucumber that does this? Or something?
it's weird how it had to be a cucumber. It's like they first tried making a cucumber, and they were like, nobody likes our cucumber. How the fuck are we going to get these seeds out?
Just shoot them all over.
Because normally things make
Tasty
edible, tasty things so that animals eat them, and then the animals shit the seeds everywhere.
But sometimes you need to avoid having certain animals eat them. So because a lot of things don't like to have mammals eat them because mammals chew up the seeds, right?
That's true.
And so that's why you have
Asshole
spicy
mammals.
stuff, because actually spicy stuff apparently doesn't hurt birds. It only hurts mammals.
But mammals still figured it out.
Well, we like this now. So fuck you, plants. But then of course we're
Plants are like, oh, dang it.
But then we say, well, let's try to make some that we don't like. We'll just do that to ourselves now.
And then plants were like, well, this one's bitter. We're like, haha, it's beer now. Fuck you, plants. We really hate plants. I think.
cashew
well, no, we
trees.
love to eat them. Is where we are.
We love to eat plants and also spite them in all of their attempts.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Because we mock them by making them even more grandiose at the crazy thing that they were doing,
Yep.
and then we eat them anyway. Still,
and then we plant them just so we can eat them. Which I guess is good for them because now they're spreading their seeds.
there's a lot of them.
So mission accomplished, I guess.
That's where
they were
plants-
playing the long game.
Yeah,
Sure.
I guess they won in the end. All right, let's get on to some questions. These questions come from our listeners over at podcast.bscotch.net. So if you'd like to get your question onto the podcast, go there and then do that. First question comes from RetroBananaManNL. Is there a reason why
probably.
you launched the Crashlands co-op update the day that you launched it?
Yes. There's a bevy of reasons. I don't know if they're good.
So one reason was we wanted to get it out and not have it be next year.
Yep.
That was one.
So that was one.
From a press standpoint,
we run out of
It also had to be done.
Yeah.
Yes. So we had finished it. What, October?
Yes.
We showed it at Shenanites.
Yep.
And then
It was done before that. I think we were in CERT.
Yeah, we got cleared through CERT like the 24th or something of October, 25th or something like that, which means we were ready technically to launch at some point. But we still had to put our store page together, which also took days to review and all sort of stuff. So the day that we picked was essentially, from a PR standpoint, the thing we needed to do is be able to somehow thread the needle between all of these games that just exploded onto the market last week, essentially, and the games that were coming out right before that. So Red Dead Redemption, which just sucked up all of the press everywhere for like 2 weeks, came out 2 weeks before. And then there was this window. There was this 1 week window before the holidays hit and before a few of these other AAA launches. Like
and before all the big like Steam sales.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
happened. Like there's Steam Thanksgiving sales and then there's Steam Winter Sale.
Yeah, so basically we looked at the calendar.
Big
There
AAA
was
games
literally
coming
just
out.
like one day.
Yeah, it was either
if we
the
wanted
8th
to
or
launch
9th.
this year. Yeah.
Yeah, either the 8th or 9th, and then otherwise we would basically hold it, because if we weren't able to actually hit a window where we could reasonably, maybe get some press about it, then we didn't want to just launch it and just do the equivalent of just making it live because no one was paying attention at the time. So we held until we just did the 8th, and that made it so that we were rushing a bunch of things to try to make it, not because the game wasn't done, but just to get all of this ducks in a row from a PR standpoint and from a storefront standpoint to get everything sort of lined up. So the main considerations there were, are there other games that are coming out that are going to suck up all the air? What's the sort of timeline between now and the end of the year so we can get this thing out? Because we did say it was going to be out in 2018 and we wanted to actually do that.
Make good on that.
And that's also for us. So,
We're known for making good on our release dates.
Yeah.
It's one of our
Hey,
core principles.
We did I mean, technically, we actually said that this one was going to be out a long time ago in 2018. But by having it still be in 2018, it sort of
Nailed it.
Felt like it was correct.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the main consideration for those things. Otherwise, it was just sort of a flurry of trying to line everything up appropriately.
And also, I feel like it had to be in November because we said that we were going to launch Levelhead in November.
Yeah.
And we thought, if we just swap out the games, nobody will notice.
No one will notice.
So
like we totally said Crashlands at one time on Switch specifically.
yeah, people are like, oh, Levelhead's coming out. I'm like, yep, it's called Crashlands now, but just go get that on Switch.
And we're working on Levelhead 2.
Yeah, Levelhead 2 is coming out, which is now called Levelhead.
Yeah.
So
It's crazy.
yeah. Deceptive business practices. You always come out ahead.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Always. So, all right, next
It's the
question.
only way to win.
Next question comes from jangofeet. I just found out about the Switch release for Levelhead. Congrats. Can you talk about the process for getting approved to publish a game on the
For
Switch?
Levelhead or for Crashlands?
It says Levelhead. So I think
They
just
probably
about that we're going to be bringing Levelhead to the Switch.
Gotcha. Yes.
Not that it has released, even though it did, and it's called Crashlands. And now it's Levelhead 2.
That's why I was confused. Yeah. So as far as the process goes for getting onto these consoles, the major difference is that you have to go through a thing called certification. So essentially what it is that Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, all these companies that have these consoles, they want to make sure that people who buy their console, because it costs a shitload of money to buy a console, when they buy a game, that the game works.
Well, and more importantly, that the game adheres to various specs.
Technical standards, essentially.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you want to get your game pushed through, like onto Switch or Xbox or whatever else, is that you'll submit your build to cert. So you send it in, and then they essentially have I don't know how they do it, but presumably a variety of automated tests as well as people with books, binders of things they're checking. And then they check, how many saves per second are you guys doing? What's this, that, or the other
Does
thing.
the game freeze or hang for any time longer than whatever the specs are for the platform?
And then if you fail that, then they send you a note and they're like, you need to fix this.
Yeah.
And the problem is that the process stops right there. So they don't do like a full check.
They don't check the rest.
They just get to wherever they got to, and then if
go
it
fix
breaks,
that.
you go fix that,
And then
you
it starts
reset
back
it.
over.
That's why it's important for you to know. It's important for you to go and look up the certification requirements.
Right. So you can
try to take care of all that stuff ahead of time. Yeah. Otherwise, you'll just be in an endless
back and forth.
And
you get kicked back to the the end of the queue. And now because there's so many games coming out on everything, the queue is quite long. So that's basically what the process entails then. And as far as getting access in the first place to be able to enter into cert, in our case, we'd had conversations going with Nintendo for I think like 2 years.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years.
It was back when Wii U was still a thing. We were actually talking about that, but then we kind of held off because we were like, well, we can't even put games on that because Game Maker didn't do it. Right. But we're like, we'll just keep the dialogue open just in case you guys have some good hardware coming up.
Yep,
which turned out they did.
Yeah. So we just kept that conversation open, and again, that's part of our overall strategy is just to
talk to people.
Make sure you're always talking to the platforms in particular because they know what's going on and they got plans.
Which is, of course, far easier said than done.
It's only something you can do if you have a game that they want.
Yeah.
Already.
Yep. So in the case of Levelhead,
or that you think that they would want genuinely.
Yes. So in the case of Levelhead, what we did was we were 11 weeks in at GDC this past March, and we took it to all of our meetings with the big platforms and then basically pitched them on it. Yeah. Even though it's not coming out, and even though in the case of like Apple and Google, like they don't need to do anything. Like we can just launch it, but there's no cert process. Yeah, Steam. They don't need to allow us to do anything, but Nintendo did. So in the case of that, it was we just literally had a 2-minute pitch and caught our guy sort of in between some of his meetings in a hallway, and then just hit it with it, and then
we figured out where he was going to be, and we tackled him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Nice,
yep."
So we're in. We did it. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of the networking is just sort of like strategic tackling moves.
Yep.
Somebody's going from one meeting to another, and you're like, boom, tackle. Boom. That's they call it an elevator pitch because that's the scenario where you're most likely to be able to pitch your whatever.
Yeah, right.
Like when that person is going, they've been in a meeting with somebody that they actually care about, and they got onto the elevator to go to the next meeting with somebody they actually care about,
and then you get in,
and they don't care about you. And you get in the elevator with them.
But now they're trapped.
But now they're trapped in there. Yeah. And then
now you're in a meeting.
You have created a meeting.
But it's very short.
Yeah. So, because again, if people already cared, you wouldn't have to pitch anything.
I got to say that you got to have a certain level of social skill to navigate that and not make it feel bad for anybody. Yeah.
I think to be clear, don't trap anybody in an elevator.
Yeah, that's never a good idea. But even
so
when
you don't get in there immediately pull the alarm and be like, "Fuck, I guess we got to talk about my game."
I measured the timing. The firefighters will take at least 12 minutes to get here. Yeah, I have a demo. Yeah.
So your game better be really good if you've pulled that move.
Well, I think this
because
you're going to jail.
You're going to jail for false imprisonment.
I read Stephen Pressfield, who's the guy who did The War of Art. He wrote a book called No One Wants to Read Your Shit, which is about writing, but it's the same idea for games too. But basically all he says is like most of what is created is people wanting to create something. Essentially it's for themselves. It's sort of like an ego stroke. He just described it as it's like a very, extravagant selfie, essentially, for the most part. And being able to make something that people actually want is very hard to do.
That's like when you take an othery.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is when you take a picture of a different person.
Yeah, it's so putting yourself in the position of the other person when you're doing one of these pitches is just what you have to do.
Yeah.
So it's not about.
You have to ask: is my product really as good as, say, the top 5 products that they have launched in the past week or whatever? Right.
Yeah. And if the answer is no, then either go build something else or
do more work,
or don't sell it on that platform in particular. Yeah. So that's why console is still one of the considered one of the most gate-kept places, because you still have to like somehow get on it.
Yeah. Well, I think also, on like Steam or on mobile, no matter what you make, somebody's made something worse that is on that platform, which makes it feel a little bit like the bar is lower. I know we certainly felt that way.
Yeah, that's exactly why we started with mobile.
But nobody's comparing your game to the worst thing because they never see the worst thing.
They're comparing it to the best ones, right? Yeah. And so just realistically, like, and as we talked about in the past too, if you can't get that featuring treatment on the storefronts, then it basically doesn't even matter that you've launched a game. Yeah. And to get featured, that means you have to be as good or better than the X number of games that can be featured during whatever that launch window is, right? And so if that's on mobile, that means basically it's like you have to be as good as the top like 12 games that come out that week, and that's 12 games out of 5,000 or whatever. So
I think it's not that hard.
That's the first problem.
It's not that hard to be better than the majority of them, to be honest, on mobile in particular.
Yeah,
but it is very hard.
To be better than the majority of mobile games, you just have to have a game.
Yeah, that's probably about right.
And just flip a coin at that point, because on average, it might be better than half.
It's breaking into that the upper crust place that is really difficult. And even with Crashlands,
I still remember how when we launched Quadrupus Rampage, our 2 competitors that we were stuck between was Touch Girl, Touch Boob, and Boob Toucher.
Yep.
Those were the 2 games that were our top competitors as we were moving our way up the top new games list. Eventually, after 10 days, they got reported and taken down. But for 10 days, those games existed on the store.
So that's like...
And we were considered to be exactly as good as those.
We were right there. We were right there, stuck between them, getting the same number of downloads with our weird octopus game. So that's what that space is like.
Sometimes life reminds you that you're not hot shit.
Yeah. You're a small potato.
You're a small potato.
You're a tater tot. All right. Next question comes from Skoad. I was contracted to work on a game once. I was totally into it. I loved the community and had high hopes the game was destined for greatness. I eventually parted ways due to reasons, but now coming back to the game, it's just so full of monetization and so many skins and non-gameplay content that it's just cluttered and gross. How do you feel about large companies buying out small studios' games and then sticking price tags everywhere? Would you ever consider this for your games if the price was right?
I think there's 3 things here. So one is non-game content for sale.
I think that's fine and is often the only way you can actually make any money these days.
Yes. So I'm fine with that. Yeah. Maybe their store just sucks and is weird.
I don't like it, and I don't really play games that have it, but I have nothing sort of like...
Yeah, it's fine.
For me, it depends on the game. So in a game like Rocket League, I'm totally cool with it.
Yeah,
because there's no fucking story, and who cares?
Except that it's still loot box based. Is it still loot box based?
I mean, back when it wasn't. When you could just like buy a car or whatever. Buy cool wheels, In games that are supposed to be more immersion based, I feel like
you don't want silly hats. And,
So I think about like if Fallout 3 was like, hey, do you want like a cool new vault suit? $4.99. I'd be like, why don't you just put that in the game and give me something to do to get the
right.
dang suit.
Yep.
Because that makes the game better, and then I like the game more, and then I will tell more people.
I mean,
about
I would
the game.
always prefer the non-game, quote unquote stuff to be actually part of the game instead.
Yeah.
But when you're trying to decide how you're going to monetize a game, your options are basically to sell the game and then do exactly that. And now that's what I would call an actual game, and that's where you get to have the whole good immersed game experience. But if you realistically can't sell your game, then your alternative is basically to break out pieces of the game that otherwise would have been like this and sell those instead.
Well, you also have plenty of scenarios where you need such a giant player base for the game to sustain itself that it's not an option to sell it.
Yeah,
so for example, Fortnite, like if you want to have 100 goddamn people in a match,
you gotta have a huge.
You gotta have a free game because it's just hard.
Well, especially if you're trying to match skill levels.
Well, it's not true because PUBG did it just fine. The real problem was that then a free game appeared.
Yeah,
and then everybody went to that one. So it's like you don't have to do it, but as soon as somebody else does it, now you have to do it. It's a prisoner's dilemma.
But also, as soon as you're in a competitive market, because since PUBG created the market, there was no competitor for them yet. Yeah. It would have inevitably been true that even if other games came out that were pay up front, that now they would have competitors to deal with, right?
I gotta say, it is
still be a problem.
It is incredible how fast PUBG has collapsed off the radar. Of the games industry.
I saw they just released a port on something. I think
they're still trying.
They're still kicking. And I think they still have like
I
honestly
remember,
they still have a lot of players and they're still making a lot of money.
I remember in the first month or so when Fortnite came out, we were talking about it on the podcast, and we were like, "It's
gonna
PUBG is not gonna." We Butterscotch Stratum that thing.
So as far as content goes, like there's a difficulty there, which is that it's just generally hard to make money in games. So I don't necessarily knock any one of these strategies in particular. Like, I'd always enjoy having the content in the game, but I mean, I don't really give a shit.
But that means that I have to be willing to buy the game in the first place.
Exactly, which usually I am not, and nor is anybody else. So, but I guess so. Aside from that, then the next one being, what about when you see these like companies buy a product, buy a studio, and then sort of milk it for cash?
But I also think realistically that's often the only way that game could have actually succeeded.
Yes,
because otherwise the company making the game, the smaller company in this sort of example, wouldn't have needed all of the funding coming from some parent larger company because they could have just sold the game on its own and been fine. And so this is a way to mitigate the risk of having taken that enormous amount of cost, in development, and then turn around and sell the thing that you made to somebody else and be like, here, you figure out how to actually make money off of this, right? And again, like the strategy, like the companies that are big enough to even be buying games like this, like they're always looking for ways to actually make as much revenue as possible on these, because they're basically gambling themselves when they buy a new studio and its game and so on. So I mean, to me, like this is companies doing exactly what they're supposed to do, which is like try to maximize their ROI, mitigate their risk. And I think as soon as you are in a financial situation where you basically can't count on the success of your product, like you gotta sell it,
Well, but I also think that this to me speaks to I don't want to say dangers because it seems like it's sort of overstating it, but like I'll say it anyway. But the dangers of becoming really attached to a franchise, because in the long term things change hands, right? Like this is exactly what we talked about with Diablo, which is like Blizzard was their own studio, then they were bought by Vivendi, then that was bought by Activision. Or
whatever,
or they were then bought by Activision, whatever.
The Russian nesting doll situation.
Yeah, and by this point, almost none of the people involved in any of the original games are working on any of the new games. And not only that, but
of course, that was also a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. Things were different then. Yeah. Everything was different then.
Hardware was different. Just everything was different.
Yeah, the atmosphere is different. Gaming culture was a lot more of a niche kind of a thing 20 years ago. And so if you had a game with 100,000 players, that was
incredible.
Great. Now that, people won't look twice at that. And so I think if you get attached to a franchise without recognizing that it is changing hands as an investment vehicle, then you end up with situations where like I loved playing The Sims back in the day.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen The Sims lately?
No, I haven't. I'm scared of it.
It is a Pandora's box of expansion packs. You buy The Sims 4 and it's just like, oh, here's 20 more items for $40. Here's 30 items for $20, whatever. And it's just like, any new thing you want in the game. So you get like this sort of really stripped down base game, and then everything is just extra purchase, extra purchase, extra purchase. And so,
I mean,
it's
simulating real life. So
yeah,
sort of.
but I mean, the game franchise is still doing great, you know, and it's making money for EA because EA bought Maxis. But at a certain point, maybe it won't. And then The Sims as a thing will cease to exist. It's just gone now.
Well, yeah, because the monetization schemes are basically all changing to adapt to how the market is changing.
Yeah.
And so that means, you know, so things just have to be kind of driven that way especially if you're a publicly traded company.
There's no other way for them to be driven.
Yeah. You got to chase the people who will buy your stuff, right?
Yep.
And I think I do believe there's a fundamental incompatibility with the kind of purchasing that breaks immersion in gameplay, and that's currently sort of like that's where we are now, and I think it's going to keep getting more
it's
that way.
incompatible with certain kinds of games.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I think even just in general, it is just always a reminder that you're playing a game.
Yeah, but I think it
doesn't necessarily break a game.
In the context of games where that's fine.
Yeah,
then that's fine.
Yeah,
so Fortnite, League of Legends, whatever else, like you are playing a game.
Yeah, it can absolutely be fine, but I think it's still better when it's not.
Absolutely.
And you know, I think
it can be a non-negative experience.
It can be a
I don't know if you could
non-negative
say it's a positive experience.
No. But that's where we are, which means all games are going to be, you know, shifting towards that. I'm trying to get as many users as possible, because they're also like all these games are competing on these very intense markets, and if you can't soak up somebody else's user base, then you might just die.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't it Stardew Valley had numbers come out about their mobile launch?
Yeah, they said the first 3 weeks on iTunes they made $2 million, I believe is what it was.
So this is a game that just absolutely crushed it on Steam. I think, how many copies did they sell?
It's an ungodly amount.
Many.
Yeah. I mean, they sold millions and millions of copies on Steam at $20.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So we're talking, you know, 40 plus million for this game on Steam, which is great, especially considering it was made by
a dude,
one person.
It's unbelievable.
Who's in a pretty good spot right now. But if you think about what is the market saying here, which is you have a game like Candy Crush, which makes so much money. Still, it's still one of the top grossing. Actually, I think it still is the top grossing game, right? And this game is making multiple billions of dollars per year. And a game like Stardew Valley, which is this like deep, you know, sort of like rich, pay once and be done with it kind of a game. It's probably making less. Actually, if it made $2 million in its first few weeks, it probably made less than 5% of what Candy Crush is making every day, you know?
Yeah, well, and also far less than it did on PC, even though the market for mobile is far bigger in terms of number of people.
And so if you're thinking about this from a business perspective, and you're like, what kind of game should we make?
Do not make a premium game.
Then what the market is telling you is this is a bad idea, you know? And the reason that we're able to do it and that we are continuing down that path, even though maybe it is a bad idea. But we don't like the gray ethics of all this loot box bullshit and, you know, all that. I shouldn't say gray. It's just kind of disgusting. So we don't want to do that, right? And so we're sticking to our guns on that. But also, we're a really small studio.
Yeah, we can afford to.
We can afford to make hardly any money relative to something like Candy Crush or whatever. But if you are an Activision or an EA or a whatever,
you need to make bank.
You need to make a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think it matters really what our opinion is about it, because it's just whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the question is like, so the final question then is would you sell the games or the IP and let people do whatever they want to them? Ours, right?
I don't think so. No, because
if we had to, like,
if
we got ourselves in a situation where our only move was to sell the company for some reason, right? Then at that point, because we're selling the company, we don't have any rights anymore about like what people are doing.
It's more of like
stuff.
a cover your ass and try to get out alive situation, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, because you got to be honest about it.
Yeah, but I don't see that happening. And of course, if we did have to sell it, we would try to come up with as many stipulations as we could. So basically, if we had to sell it and had no leverage for some reason, then that's what we would do.
I feel like if we had to sell it, we would have no leverage.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
But here the question is basically like, would we? It just if the price was right. The question there is like, well, what would that mean in terms of like let's say we sold. I guess for starters, we can't just sell like one of our IPs. We can't just sell Crashlands, for example, because all of our games are woven together, right? So we would need to sell like the entire
portfolio
universe. But what would that take?
I don't really have any.
But to me, the hilarious part of this is like nobody would want it. Nobody's going to pay us enough money.
Yeah, because all we're doing, all we would sell you is a huge piece of work.
Yeah,
just a bunch of chores.
Kind of bunch of
work.
Well,
and the fact is, like we've already launched all the stuff. I mean, I think part of the interesting thing about this question too is just the idea that that there's a company out there who would just like want to buy somebody's stuff, right?
Yeah,
and that you got to protect yourselves from them because then they're going to contaminate it with all their money stuff, right? When realistically, if you're lucky enough to have some other company want to buy the thing that you made, like you are sitting in a fucking great place and should actually probably entertain that idea, right?
Probably true, yeah.
Because there's almost nothing that anybody can make that some other company is going to pay you so much money for that you're going to feel great about that.
Yeah.
I don't believe for a second, like if we just said like, ooh, all right, we're done. We want to sell Butterscotch. Like, I don't believe for a second that would be an easy thing to do, or we would get as much money as we want out of it.
No.
Yeah. Well, and I also think, I mean, what would we actually be selling?
Yeah, we'd be selling a bunch of games that have been out for years.
Yeah, because so much of what we do in our games, it comes from our own particular.
They got soul.
Yeah, like it comes from our own particular sense of humor and the art style and like our way of just kind of the extra touches that we kind of put on stuff. Like I don't know, like what would they do with it? What could they do with it?
They would just make it into something else.
I mean, the only company I could see this working out for is if we sold it to Behemoth. I feel like
that's about right.
At that point, I'd be like, they can do it. They can do it justice, you know. And they don't have all this gross bullshit going on with their games, you know. So that would maybe be the only scenario where I think it would make any sense for the future of the games.
But,
you know,
Behemoth wouldn't want to buy what we're
no. Why would they do that?
So
they got their own shit going on. They're busy.
Like who would want to buy it? Who would want to buy anybody's game?
This is the whole thing. Like no one wants your shit, and the truth is, like even if your shit makes some money, it's probably still not worth it to get it. You know,
because now you have to do the work of trying to make it make money, which is the hard part.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of like if somebody comes up to you and says, like, I have an idea for a game, right? That I have an idea that you should make, and I'll take a cut of the profits or whatever. Right. Which people say this, which I guess that's kind of the same as like if somebody said, "Hey, I'll sell you my game and I'll take a cut of the profits," because
same thing.
Yeah, because if they want to sell it, then that already means that they don't think that they can. Like, if they want you to buy the IP, that means they don't think they can sell.
But this is kind of like a publisher relationship, then.
Yeah,
in that particular case, right?
No, kind of.
I think
if you're selling the IP income,
well, I'm saying you don't necessarily need to sell it, but I'm saying in the case of like
if you don't think you can,
is the same thing.
Yeah, if you don't think you can successfully market and sell
well, because to me the idea of buying a game is you're also buying development obligations. You're not just buying the marketing, like you're buying the code, like you're buying the whole damn thing, and so now you need
what happens when
engineers.
The iTunes updates.
You're buying all the accounts. You're buying you're just buying all the things.
Yeah,
I can't imagine having to look through all of our shit and figure out.
No.
So
currently, if anything happened to any one of us right now, like the company's just sunk now because there's too much siloed knowledge.
Yeah. So I found a program that you can use to go through your game maker projects and count the lines of code and characters and stuff. So we're with Levelhead is about 75,000 lines of code, and about 2 million characters.
Nice.
That's 2 million keystrokes.
2 million keystrokes. That's a shit ton of code.
Well, and this is where it is right now. I remember this isn't counting refactoring.
This isn't counting, and it's also not even counting the rest of the game that we're still working on.
Yeah.
So,
what about Crashlands? Did you run on that?
No, but it's probably less.
Probably. Yeah.
I
can see that.
Because actually, a lot of the tools and stuff that we developed in Crashlands were brought over to Levelhead as foundational stuff. Right. So, that's the thing. That's the thing. I remember I was reading in one of the Game Maker subreddits or something. They were like, if you're making a platformer, you should not have more than like 7,000 or 8,000 lines of code. I'm like, dude.
If you're making a good platformer, you're going to have a fuckload of code.
Our character, like the player character, has like 2,500 lines of code.
Did you see? Because Celeste published
like if you include all the scripts and everything else.
Celeste published their platform, their character code, and it's just like a it's a nightmare. And that's the whole point. It's like if you make a really good platformer, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, well, and it's because like, yeah, of course, if you want to make just like really simple, like, yeah, I'm jumping around on things. Yeah, I could do that in like 40 lines of code, no problem. But the interesting stuff comes from all these weird exceptions.
Yes.
Like what happens when you become invincible? What happens if there's 4 players? What about like a grappling hook mechanic? What about
also, how do you collide with things and from which directions?
Yeah.
And how do you fall through floors?
How do you jump up through floors?
Yeah, because we even have scenarios like, okay, you've got these blocks that you can hit your head on to get stuff out of. You know, we call them prize blocks or whatever, but it's like your classic Mario, like hit your head on a thing and a mushroom comes out. And so we added the ability to make those things invisible, which means you just totally pass through them from all directions except the direction that you would normally hit your head on, right? So you can't see them at all, and you can walk right through them and fall through them and stuff. And then if you jump and hit it, then
There's a surprise block.
right. Yeah. But you can also rotate them, which means they're like which direction am I solid from is completely dependent on how you've rotated it, right? And also whether you are moving in the right direction, right? Because like you can
but there's walking and then there's being on a platform that's moving, which are 2 different kinds of moving.
You could also be flying out of a barrel.
Yep, you could be standing on a treadmill, and that thing is moving you, but you're also moving. That's kind of weird.
Treadmills have actually been one of the hardest, weirdest things.
The problem with treadmills is that if you do them realistically, they fuck with your jumping.
Yes.
Right. So like if you're standing on a treadmill and the treadmill's going, let's just put it in human terms, 6 miles an hour or something in one direction, and you jump, then you would now be like, if you were just standing on that treadmill and moving, then you are also going 6 miles an hour. So when you jump, you would move in an arc, right? In a
6 mile an hour leap, essentially. Yeah.
But so what that would mean then is, and then if you think about like you ever been on one of those moving sidewalks in airports?
And you can go like triple speed if you walk on
your
it.
legs are moving like normal. You're just doing your normal shit, but it's additive, right? So if normally you're walking at like 3 miles an hour and the treadmill's going at 3 miles an hour, now you're still moving the same way, but you're walking twice as fast, right? Because you're inheriting the movement.
And if you jump off that airport sidewalk,
then you will fly.
Yeah.
Like if you did a long jump but started on a moving sidewalk,
that'd be awesome.
then you would go fucking far, right? So
especially if the end of it was a ramp that was still moving, you know, so like
flung you upward.
So yeah, you just run up and then do a my God, that'd be amazing.
So
I want this to be it.
Right. So this is how we had it in Levelhead.
Imagine if the thing was going like 20 miles an hour.
So
you don't have to imagine it because we had it in Levelhead. And the problem there was like the character already runs pretty fast. And by having treadmills that move you even a little bit faster than normal, all of a sudden you can no longer predict your jumping movements because you're used to jumping a certain distance and moving certain speeds. And now all of a sudden you'd have treadmills that could be going basically any speed. And now they're just adding their speed directly to your speed. And now you can't figure out how far you jump.
Yeah, especially for some of those sort of nightmare puzzles where it's just one treadmill block that you have to like jump on and then jump back off of really quickly.
Because as soon as you touch
it, could be then any speed once you hit it.
As soon as you touched it would change your momentum, right?
Yeah.
So then what that means is the optimal strategy for dealing with treadmills is to just constantly be jumping. Because we had to remove that whole thing where they no longer can affect your speed. They just move you while you're on them. And as soon as you jump, you just jump straight up. But that means that the way to get around treadmills is to just perpetually be jumping.
Yeah, because now you're not really being moved by the treadmill very much at all.
Yeah. So we still have not solved the treadmill
That
problem.
might just be the best solution, unfortunately.
Yeah. And we had the same thing with moving platforms. Like you get on a block that's moving around in the air, and originally we had you inheriting its X.
Yeah, which basically sometimes you'd be riding on a block and it's just going to the right. And maybe it's just going at your move speed, your normal move speed. But then you jump and you just go flying off this thing. Or like right before it turns a corner or something, it goes somewhere direct and you just go sailing off into the wilderness.
How does Mario handle this? Because I'm pretty sure you do not inherit your
I don't think you do.
Yeah, you don't inherit that.
But it feels so... I guess it feels bad in both scenarios.
Yeah.
Like it feels bad to jump and then have the thing just move out from underneath you. Like this seems wrong. It seems like, why the fuck do I have to jump and then move to the right in the air when this thing, it doesn't make any sense.
Just because the alternative sucks so much.
The alternative sucks more.
And they're still super useful. That's the unfortunate thing. Like I wish we could just cut them because they're so annoying, but like they're still super.
Yeah, moving platforms. Moving platforms more than anything else in this game have just been because like getting a basic moving platform that like again it's like that the person saying, oh, well, I could code up multiplayer for your game in 15 minutes, right? Or I could add controller support to a game. And it's like, yes, you can make a platform in 40 lines of code. You could code up, quote, multiplayer in 15 minutes. But covering up all of the problems takes months and months and months,
Thousands of hours.
Yeah. So once we get it in people's hands, we'll see what the response is for some of these things. I don't know. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for this week. We'd like to thank our producer, Fat Bard, for making us sound good. Thanks to our community moderators who keep our Discord running. If you'd like to get more involved in the Butterscotch community, you can hop into our Discord server at discord.gg/bscotch and come say hello. Also, if you'd like to adorn your body with Butterscotch merch, you can check out our shop over at shop.bscotch.net. And if you'd like to send us something, we have a mailbox, which you can find the address for over at mailbox.bscotch.net. Last but not least, if you'd like to support the podcast with money, we'll grab that money over at moneygrab.bscotch.net. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.